For Sony shooters, Tamron has been a great option if you're looking for cheaper alternatives to the native Sony glass, and that's great. But this time around, with this lens, Tamron has done something really special, and I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about it. What is up, people? Dunna here, and today we're going to be talking about the new Tamron 35-150 f2-2.8 lens for Sony E-Mount Full Frame cameras. Now, let's just take a second and think about all of those numbers that I just said. 35mm and f2 at the wide end. Take a second and think of any other Sony E-Mount full frame zoom lenses with f2 as the widest aperture. I don't know about you, but I couldn't find any. Even the highest end professional zoom lenses for Sony E-Mount are all constant f2.8 apertures. And while this lens doesn't give us a constant aperture through the zoom range, it does manage to still get us to f2.8 out at the long end. So here's what's going through my mind when I hear all of this. If you carry a 16-35, 24-70, and a 70-200 to make sure that you've got great coverage, this lens could technically replace the need for the 24-70 and 70-200, and you'd still be covered between 16 and 150. And to top it off, in that situation, you've got an extra stop of light and shallower depth of field at 35mm. All of that makes this an incredibly versatile offering and allows you to use one lens for a variety of shooting, like street, portraits, maybe a great wedding lens, and more. Okay, so on paper, that all sounds great, but the question is, how does it actually perform? So I went out shooting both photos and videos with this lens, and I've put together a short video for you to see exactly how it performed in a practical, real-world situation. After the video, we'll come back, we'll take a look at some of the photos, and talk about my experience and some of the pros and cons of this lens. The following video was filmed entirely on the Sony FX3 and the Tamron 35-150mm f2-2.8. Alright, so in a practical application, was the 35-150 everything that I hoped it would be? Mostly, I'd say yes. Tamron has definitely done something different with this lens than what we've seen in some of their other lenses. This lens doesn't feel cheap or like a budget option, it feels like a premium option meant to stand up against the Sony G Master or Sigma Art lenses in my opinion. The materials that they've used actually remind me a lot of my Sigma 24-70 f2.8 Art lens. It's less plasticky feeling than other Tamron lenses, and the zoom and focus ring have a much nicer feel to them. They're smooth and responsive, yet there's still a nice amount of tension and physical feedback from the rings themselves. We've also got some extra options that you see on other premium lenses, like a lock so that your barrel doesn't creep on you. We've got a manual focus toggle switch and 3 custom buttons. On top of that, we've got a new 3-way custom switch that changes what the custom buttons do, and a USB-C input that allows you to do some really cool things using the Tamron lens utility. I did an entire video going into detail on what can be done with this, and it's so cool in my opinion. But a couple of things to note are the ability to set your custom buttons to perform pre-programmed focus pulls, or to switch your focus ring to become an aperture ring at the click of a button. If you haven't seen that video already, I highly recommend that you check it out after this one. This lens is also weather sealed with a gasket on the back, as well as weather sealing on several other points on the lens, including on the USB-C port, which a lot of people asked about in my other video. So for those shooting in harsh weather, you should still be well covered here. Now, with that premium feel, wide zoom range, and impressive aperture comes the fact that this lens is fairly large and heavy. It's definitely bigger than my 24-70 and quite a bit heavier too. The barrel does extend when you zoom in, and we've got an 82mm filter thread, so it's quite a bit wider than the typical 67mm thread that we've been seeing on other Tamron lenses. When I was out shooting with it, the size and weight was definitely something that I couldn't ignore, but it didn't feel unbalanced or burdensome necessarily. For long shoots or long walk around days, I can see it getting a bit tiring, and it definitely isn't compact or inconspicuous by any means. Autofocus performance worked great for me. It was quick and accurate in photo mode and smooth in video mode. Every once in a while, I did notice this lens doing a little autofocus jump before it started moving in the right direction, but I couldn't replicate the issue on purpose, and it didn't really get in the way enough to really call it a problem. It just seemed like isolated incidents that corrected themselves fairly quickly. The other thing that I found really impressive was that the focus breathing on this lens is super minimal. When I was using the pre-programmed focus pulls that I made with the custom buttons, I didn't really notice any breathing going from super close focus to super far. When it comes to image quality, I'll admit, I was nervous. The focal range and aperture kind of seemed too good to be true, so I figured it would have to suffer somewhere. But honestly, it's pretty darn great. Sharpness was super solid to my eye, the contrast and colors looked great straight out of camera and edited nicely. And as far as that variable aperture goes, you've got f2 from 35mm to about 38, then at 39 it switches over to f2.2, at 59mm we go up to f2.5, and then from 80 all the way to 150 we're at f2.8. The one thing that I can say I came up against here was some pretty intense flaring when shooting towards a light source. When I was doing that sunset video, I definitely got a lot of flaring and some really washed out images. Sometimes I actually kind of like that, but everyone's a bit different there, so I figured it was worth saying. Okay, so brass tacks. Is this a new Dunna recommended lens? Well, firstly, earlier I mentioned that this lens wasn't like the other inexpensive Tamron lenses, and that goes for both the features and quality, but also for the price. The 35-150 f2-2.8 is going for $18.99 US or $25.99 Canadian. This is not a budget lens by any means. If you're comparing this to something like the Sigma 24-70 f2.8, it looks really pricey. But then again, if you compare it to the 24-70 G Master, It's actually not that bad. Honestly, I don't think that this lens is overpriced for what you're getting, but I also don't think it's a cheap lens, and it's not an everyone needs it in your kit kind of lens specifically because of that price. It's going to be out of reach for a lot of people who are just starting to build up their kit, and while the versatility is amazing, that's still a decent amount of money for a single lens, and there are other options out there. For some people, I think this lens will seem like a no-brainer, and for other people, I think it'll be a no way. Let me know which one of those people you are down in the comments, and just let me know what you think of the lens in general. And on your way down there, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on future reviews and tutorials. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Autofocus.